My name is David. I'm 42 years old. I work from home as a medical transcriptionist. I listen to doctors dictate surgical reports all day long, and I type them up. It requires focus. It requires being able to hear. But more than that, it requires a certain kind of mental space, a quiet room, a closed door. That's all. I live in a suburb outside Phoenix, Arizona. The houses are stucco and tile roof. The yards are small rocks and desert plants. It's the kind of neighborhood where people move because they want predictability. The HOA makes sure everyone's garage door is the same beige color. The streets are wide and clean. It should have been safe. It should have been quiet. I bought my house 8 years ago. It was a foreclosure. I fixed it up slowly, doing most of the work myself on weekends. I finished the bathrooms. I painted the walls. I installed the ceiling fans. I did it all legally, pulling permits, working Monday through Friday after my day job, never starting before 8 in the morning, never working past 6 at night. I respected the neighbors because I understood something fundamental. We share walls, we share air, we share sound. I finished my renovations in 18 months. Then I enjoyed the silence I had earned. The house next door was owned by a couple named the Harpers. They were older, quiet. They moved to a retirement community in Florida 3 years ago. That's when the Buchanans moved in. Greg and Linda Buchanan. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. They drove a white Ford F-150 that was always spotless. When they first moved in, I waved from my driveway. Greg waved back. He seemed normal. He talked about the heat, about the pool they were going to put in, about how the house needed some updating. I told him I understood. I told him I had done my own renovations. I told him I knew how disruptive it could be. He smiled and said, "Don't worry. We'll keep it civilized." That was 3 years ago. The first week, they painted the interior. That was fine. No noise. The second week, they replaced the carpet with tile. That involved some hammering, but it stopped by 5 o'clock. I told myself they were getting settled. That's what you do when new neighbors move in. You give them grace. Then they started on the exterior. It began with a deck. Greg decided the backyard needed a massive wooden deck that wrapped around the pool they were planning. The hammering started at 7 in the morning on a Saturday, not 7:30. Not 8, 7 sharp. I woke up to the sound of a nail gun. Not just any nail gun. A pneumatic framing nailer. It makes a sound like a gunshot. Bang, pause. Bang, pause. Bang. I have hyperacusis. It's a condition where normal environmental sounds are perceived as painfully loud. I've had it since my 20s. A bad ear infection damaged my hearing, and now my brain interprets certain frequencies as threats. High-pitched sounds, sudden impacts, screeching, beeping. The nail gun was all 3. I got out of bed. I put in my high-fidelity earplugs. They cut 20 decibels, but they don't block everything. I could still feel the impact through the walls, through the floor, into my jaw. By 9 o'clock, I had a headache that felt like someone was pressing a thumb into my temple. I went outside. Greg was standing on the half-built frame of his deck, wearing sunglasses and work gloves. He looked happy. He looked relaxed. "Hey, Greg," I said, "do you think you could maybe start a little later on weekends? Like 8 or 9? The noise ordinance says 8. He looked down at me from his perch. He smiled. "City code says 7 on Saturdays, buddy." I checked. I nodded. I went back inside. He was right. The city of Phoenix allows construction noise from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturdays, and from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Sundays. He was within his rights, technically. I told myself it would be over soon. A deck takes what, 2 weekends? Maybe 3? It took 4 months. Every Saturday morning, every Sunday morning. The nail gun, the circular saw screaming through pressure-treated lumber. The radio blasting country music so the workers could hear it over the tools. Workers who Greg hired, then fired, then hired new ones, always different trucks in the driveway, always different voices shouting measurements. I started wearing noise-canceling headphones over my earplugs. I looked ridiculous, like a pilot in my own kitchen. I could still feel the vibrations. The bass from the radio traveled through the ground. My coffee mug rattled on the counter. I tried to work. I transcription reports about appendectomies and hip replacements, but I kept making mistakes. I had to rewind the audio files 3-4 times to catch a word, because another bang would startle me and I'd lose my place. My productivity dropped. My supervisor sent me an email asking if everything was okay at home. I wrote back that I was having some noise issues with neighbors. She was sympathetic. She suggested I take some time off. I couldn't afford to. I needed the money. I needed the health insurance. I started dreading Friday nights. That's when the anxiety would set in. I knew what was coming. The Saturday morning assault. I stopped going to bed late on Fridays because I knew I'd be woken up at 7 anyway. I started going to bed at 9, trying to get sleep before the noise started. It didn't help. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the first bang. One Saturday, around month 3 of the deck project, I went over again. Greg was cutting a board. The saw screamed. He didn't see me. I waited. When he finished the cut, he lifted his ear protection and saw me standing at his fence line. "Hey," he said. "What's up?" "I wanted to ask," I said. "How much longer do you think the deck will take?" He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Oh, man, hard to say. We ran into some issues with the foundation. Might be another month, maybe 2. "And the pool?" I asked. He laughed. "Oh, we haven't even started the pool yet. That's phase 2. Then we're doing the outdoor kitchen, then the guest house." I felt something cold in my stomach. "The guest house?" "Yeah," he said. "We're going to Airbnb it, make some money. You know how it is. Got to maximize the property value." I went back to my house. I sat at my kitchen table. I looked at my calendar. Another month of the deck. Then the pool. That would be jackhammers. Concrete trucks, then the outdoor kitchen, more construction. Then the guest house. That would be framing, roofing, plumbing, electrical. Years. He was talking about years. That Sunday they started at 7:15. Not 7, but close enough. The hammering was different this time. Heavier. They were attaching the ledger board to the house. It required drilling into concrete. The sound was a high-pitched whine that went right through my earplugs. I called the non-emergency police line. I asked about noise complaints. The dispatcher was tired. She told me that unless it was after hours, there was nothing they could do. She told me to document it. She told me to talk to my HOA. I called the HOA. The president was a woman named Barbara who lived 3 streets over. She sounded like she was eating lunch while she talked to me. "Greg Buchanan pulled all the proper permits," she said. "We can't stop someone from improving their property." "He's been building this deck for 4 months," I said. "Well," she said, "these things take time. Have you tried talking to him directly?" I hung up. I knew where this was going. I had seen it before. Not with neighbors, but with roommates, with landlords, with anyone who had power over your environment and didn't care. The bureaucracy was designed to protect the person making the noise, not the person hearing it. I started researching. I learned everything I could about sound ordinances, about decibel levels, about construction permits. I bought a decibel meter app for my phone. It wasn't perfect, but it was accurate enough. I started recording Saturday morning, 7:02 a.m. The nail gun starts. I stand in my bedroom 6 feet from the property line. I hit record on my phone. The meter spikes at 85 decibels. 85 decibels is the sound of a diesel truck idling next to your head. The EPA recommends no more than 70 decibels to prevent hearing damage over time. I recorded for 10 minutes, 82 to 88 decibels, consistently. I emailed the recording to the City Code Enforcement Office. I got an automated response. I called them Monday morning. A man named Mark answered. He sounded bored. "I'll send someone out to check," he said. Nobody came. The next weekend, Greg started building the stairs for the deck. The stair stringers required angled cuts. The circular saw screamed for 45 seconds at a time, then stopped, then screamed again. The decibel meter hit 92. That's concert-level volume. That's damaging. I started keeping a log. Date, time, decibel level, duration, type of noise. I bought a real decibel meter online, a professional one. It cost $200. It was worth every penny. I started taking video with my phone, showing the meter reading, showing the timestamp, showing Greg's workers shouting over the noise. I saw a doctor, an ENT specialist. I told him about the hyperacusis, about the construction noise. He examined my ears. He wrote me a letter. It said, "Patient suffers from hyperacusis and noise-induced anxiety. Exposure to construction noise above 80 decibels for extended periods is medically contraindicated and may result in permanent worsening of condition." I made copies. I put one in a file folder. I labeled it Buchanan Noise Documentation. The deck finally finished in month 5. It was massive. It wrapped around the entire back of their house. It was beautiful, I'll give him that. Redwood, built-in seating, pergola overhead. He threw a party to celebrate. They had a band, a live band in the backyard. They played until 10 at night. The bass vibrated through my chest. I called the police again. This time it was after 7 on a Saturday, so it was a valid noise complaint. An officer came. I watched from my window. He talked to Greg. Greg shook his hand. The officer left. The music continued until midnight. The next morning, I found a note on my windshield. It was handwritten. It said, "Sorry you're so sensitive. Maybe you should move." Gee, I kept the note. I put it in the file. Phase 2 started 2 weeks later. The pool. Greg rented a jackhammer to break up the existing concrete patio. The jackhammer weighed 90 pounds and made a sound like machine gun fire. It started at 7:05 on a Saturday morning. The decibel meter pegged at 98. That's the sound of a motorcycle without a muffler. That's the threshold of pain. My windows rattled. A picture fell off my wall. The glass cracked. I went outside. Greg was wearing ear protection, safety glasses, a dust mask. He looked like he was preparing for war. He was smiling. "Hey, Greg," I shouted over the noise. He turned off the jackhammer. The sudden silence was almost as jarring as the noise. "Yeah," he said. "That's 98 decibels, I said. "That's over the limit." "The city ordinance says construction can't exceed 85 decibels at the property line," he laughed. "You're measuring wrong, buddy. Plus, I've got a permit. I can do this all day." "You're damaging my property," I said. "My window cracked." He looked at my house. At the window, he shrugged. "Prove it was me." He pulled the trigger on the jackhammer. It started up again. He stared at me while it ran. He didn't blink. I went back inside. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. From the vibration. From the violation. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of noise, but because of what I had realized. Greg Buchanan wasn't just inconsiderate. He was hostile. He knew I was home. He knew I worked from home. He knew I was sensitive to sound. And he didn't care. Worse than not caring, he enjoyed it. The note proved it. The staring contest with the jackhammer proved it. I got out of bed at 3 in the morning. I went to my computer. I started researching Greg Buchanan. Public records are easy to find if you know where to look. I found his mortgage. I found his LLC for the Airbnb guest house he was planning. I found his permit applications. I found something interesting. The pool permit was limited to 90 days. The guest house permit hadn't been approved yet. It was pending zoning review because the structure was too close to the property line. He needed a variance. He didn't have it. I also found his wife's Facebook page, Linda Buchanan. She posted constantly photos of the kids, photos of the deck, complaints about the heat, and one post from 3 weeks ago. Greg is finally taking care of the backyard. No more excuses. Weekend warrior mode activated. LOL. Weekend warrior mode. That's what she called it. To them, my torture was a joke, a cute hashtag. I made a decision then. I wasn't going to ask anymore. I wasn't going to call the police anymore. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to document everything. Every decibel, every minute past 7, every violation. I was going to build a case so airtight that Greg Buchanan would drown in it. I bought a tripod. I set up my phone in my bedroom window facing his yard. I bought a security camera for my front porch to record the comings and goings of the workers. I started keeping a spreadsheet. Date, time, equipment used, decibel reading, duration, permit status, city ordinance violated. I learned the ordinances by heart. No construction noise before 7 a.m. on Saturdays. No construction noise exceeding 85 decibels at the property line. No construction on Sundays before 8 a.m. All pools must have permits posted visibly. All contractors must be licensed. Greg broke all of them. He started at 6:45 one Saturday. I was awake, waiting. I hit record. The timestamp on the video showed 6:47 a.m. The decibel meter showed 78 decibels, climbing. I let it run for an hour. By 7:30, it was 90 decibels. I emailed the video to code enforcement. I CC'd the HOA. I CC'd the police non-emergency supervisor. I included the city ordinance citation. I included my doctor's note. I wrote, "This is a pattern of harassment. I have documented 6 months of violations. I am requesting immediate enforcement action." Monday morning, code enforcement called me back. It was a different person this time. A woman named Sarah. She sounded competent. "I've reviewed your documentation," she said. "It's very thorough. We're going to send an officer out this week to take their own readings." "Thank you," I said. "One thing," she said. "You mentioned he's building a guest house. I don't see a permit for that in the system." "He applied for a variance," I said. "It's pending." "Pending means not approved," she said. "If he starts construction before approval, that's a major violation. Keep watching." I kept watching. Greg finished the pool excavation, then he started the plumbing. He hired a guy to trench the yard for the pipes. The trencher started at 6:30 on a Sunday morning. I recorded it. 94 decibels, Sunday before 8. I filed another complaint. Then Greg made his mistake. He started framing the guest house. He didn't have the variance. He just started building. I watched from my window as he and 3 workers carried lumber into his backyard and started erecting walls. They worked all weekend, hammering, sawing, shouting. I called Sarah at code enforcement directly. She answered. "He's building without a permit," I said. "I have video of the framing going up." "He doesn't have the zoning variance." "We'll be out there Monday morning," she said. Monday came. I watched from my window. A white city truck pulled up at 9 a.m. A man in a khaki shirt got out. He walked into Greg's backyard. He was back there for 30 minutes. When he came out, Greg was with him. Greg was red in the face. He was gesturing. The code enforcement officer was shaking his head. He handed Greg a piece of paper. An orange stop work order. He taped it to Greg's front door. I allowed myself 1 cup of coffee. 1 moment of satisfaction. Then I went back to work. Greg knocked on my door that evening. I answered. He was holding the stop work order. He crumpled it in his hand. "You did this?" he said. "It wasn't a question. You built without a permit," I said. "That's illegal." "You've been watching me," he said. "You're obsessed. You're a psycho." "I'm documenting violations," I said. "You've been breaking the law for 8 months. Every weekend, you cracked my window. You've made my home unlivable. It's my property," he said. His voice was getting loud. "I can do what I want on my property." "No," I said. "You can't. There are ordinances. There are other people who live here. You don't get to destroy my weekends because you want an Airbnb." He stepped closer. "You're going to regret this. I'm going to make your life hell." I didn't step back. "You already did. For 8 months now it's your turn." He left. He crumpled the stop work order and threw it at my feet. I picked it up. I smoothed it out. I added it to my file. The next week, Greg applied for retroactive permits. The city denied them. He needed the variance first. The zoning board met once a month. The next meeting was 3 weeks away. He had to wait. He spent those 3 weeks sulking. He glared at me when he took out the trash. He revved his truck engine in his driveway facing my house at 6 in the morning. I recorded it. 89 decibels. Vehicle noise ordinance violation. I filed another complaint. The zoning meeting happened on a Thursday. I attended. I sat in the back. Greg was there in a suit. Linda was there. They presented their case for the variance. They needed to build the guest house 6 feet closer to the property line than allowed. They said it was necessary for the design. The neighbors were invited to comment. I raised my hand. I live next door, I said. I have hyperacusis. I'm sensitive to noise. Mr. Buchanan has been conducting construction for 8 months, often starting before legal hours, often exceeding legal decibel limits. He built a deck that took 5 months. He excavated a pool. He has shown no regard for noise ordinances or neighbor welfare. Granting this variance would allow him to continue this pattern indefinitely with the guest house construction. I have documented 87 separate violations. I have submitted them to code enforcement. I am requesting that the board deny the variance on the grounds that the applicant has demonstrated consistent disregard for community standards and legal requirements. The board members looked at my file. I had printed copies for all of them. Photos, videos, decibel readings, the doctor's note, the cracked window, the crumpled stop work order. Greg stood up. "This guy is targeting me," he said. "He's got a vendetta. He's mentally ill. He wears ear protection in his own house." The board chairman held up his hand. "Mr. Buchanan, please sit down. We've reviewed the documentation. The violations are well documented. The city has confirmed them. Your pattern of non-compliance is concerning." They voted. Unanimous. Variance denied. Greg couldn't build the guest house. Not legally. Not where he wanted it. He stormed out. Linda followed him. She was crying. I stayed until the end of the meeting. I thanked the board. I went home. The next morning, Friday, Greg was in his backyard. He was drunk. I could tell by the way he moved. He was tearing down the partial framing he had done for the guest house. He was throwing 2x4s into a pile. He was shouting at Linda. She was trying to get him to come inside. I didn't record it. I let him have his shame in private. Saturday morning came. 7 a.m. No noise. I lay in bed, waiting. 7:30. Silence. 8. Nothing. At 9, I got up. I looked out the window. Greg was sitting on his new deck. He was drinking coffee. He looked small, defeated. I went outside to get my mail. He saw me. He didn't wave. He didn't shout. He just looked away. That should have been the end of it. But Greg Buchanan wasn't finished being selfish. 2 weeks later, he rented a bounce house. It was a Saturday. He set it up in his backyard for his daughter's birthday party. The bounce house had a blower motor. It ran constantly. It was 80 decibels at my property line. Not illegal, but constant. A low whine, like a vacuum cleaner that never stops. The party started at 10 a.m. It was supposed to end at 4. It went until 9 at night. The blower never stopped. The kids screamed. The parents shouted. The music played. I recorded it, all 9 hours. I documented the decibel levels. 79 to 81. Just under the limit. Intentionally. He knew exactly what he was doing. He had read the ordinances. He knew where the line was. He was walking right up to it and spitting over it. The next weekend, he did it again. Another party, another bounce house. This time, it was a corporate event for Linda's real estate business. 30 people in the backyard, a hired DJ. The music was loud enough to feel in my chest, but at the property line, it measured 84 decibels. 1 decibel under the limit. He was weaponizing the law. Using the letter of it to violate the spirit of it, I started having panic attacks, real ones, my heart racing, my hands going numb. I couldn't work. I started taking sick days. I saw my doctor again. He prescribed anxiety medication. He wrote another note. Patient requires quiet environment for medical reasons. Current neighbor activity is exacerbating condition. I knew what Greg was doing. He couldn't build his guest house, so he was going to make me move. He was going to harass me with legal noise until I broke, until I sold my house, until he won. I thought about selling. I really did. I looked at listings. I could move to a quieter neighborhood, further out, away from the city. But then I looked at my mortgage. I had a great rate. I had equity. I had fixed up every inch of that house with my own hands. And I thought, why should I leave? Why should I be the one to go? I was here first. I followed the rules. I was quiet. I was respectful. No, I wasn't moving. Greg Buchanan was going to follow the rules, or he was going to pay. I started researching again. Not ordinances this time. Lawsuits. I looked up private nuisance laws in Arizona. I looked up tort law. I found something interesting. Hyperacusis could qualify as a disability under the ADA if it substantially limited a major life activity. Working was a major life activity. I couldn't work without quiet. Therefore, Greg's noise could be construed as discrimination if he knew about my condition and intentionally exacerbated it. I called a lawyer. His name was Richard. He specialized in property disputes. I told him everything. I sent him my files. All 6 months of documentation. The videos, the decibel readings, the medical notes, the HOA emails, the police reports. He called me back 2 days later. You've got a case, he said. It's not a slam dunk, but you've got a solid private nuisance claim. Plus, if we can prove he's retaliating against you for filing the code complaints. That's additional damages. Punitive damages, maybe. How much will it cost? I asked. Retainer is $5,000, he said. But if we win, he pays your legal fees. And David, with this documentation, we're going to win. I hired him. I paid the retainer. It cleaned out my savings, but I didn't care. Richard sent Greg a letter. It was certified mail. I watched Greg sign for it. He opened it on his front porch. He read it. He looked at my house. He crumpled it up. 3 days later, the bounce house appeared again. This time it was for no reason. Just a Saturday. Just to mess with me. 80 decibels. All day. Richard filed the lawsuit. Greg Buchanan, private nuisance, intentional infliction of emotional distress, violation of Arizona's reasonable enjoyment of property statutes. Greg hired a lawyer too, a cheap one of those guys who advertises on bus benches. His name was Saul. He sent a response claiming I was a vexatious litigant, that I was overly sensitive, that the noise was normal neighborhood activity, that I should have known what I was getting into when I moved next to a family with children. We entered discovery. Richard subpoenaed Greg's permits, all of them. The deck, the pool, the guest house application. He found something. The deck was overbuilt. It extended 2 feet closer to my property line than the permit allowed. It was a zoning violation, a big one. Richard also subpoenaed Greg's bank records. He was paying the workers cash, under the table. No workers' comp insurance, no liability insurance. If one of them got hurt on his property, he was ruined. Richard sent another letter. This one wasn't to Greg. It was to Greg's mortgage company and his homeowner's insurance and the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. He informed them that Greg was conducting unlicensed contracting work, that he had built an unpermitted structure, that he was violating zoning laws, that he had no workers' comp coverage for his employees. The mortgage company called Greg. They threatened to call the loan due. The insurance company threatened to cancel his policy. The Registrar of Contractors opened an investigation. Greg came to my door again. This time, he wasn't angry. He was scared. He had dark circles under his eyes. Please, he said. Call it off. I'll stop the parties. I'll stop everything. Just drop the lawsuit. You broke my window, I said. You terrorized me for 8 months. You tried to drive me out of my home. And now you want mercy? I'll pay for the window, he said. I'll pay for your medical bills. I'll pay for soundproofing. Whatever you want. I want you to follow the law, I said. That's all I ever wanted. 7 a.m. start times, 85 decibel limits, proper permits, basic human decency. I'll do all of it, he said. Just please, the mortgage. They're going to foreclose. I looked at him. I thought about all the Saturday mornings, all the headaches, the earplugs, the anxiety medication, the way he stared at me with that jackhammer running. I'll talk to my lawyer, I said. But I'm not promising anything. I talked to Richard. We drafted a settlement agreement. It was strict, brutal. Greg had to remove the overhanging portion of the deck. He had to cease all construction for 2 years. He had to pay me $15,000 for medical expenses and property damage. He had to sign a noise restriction covenant that would run with the land, binding any future owners. No construction before 8 a.m. on weekends. No parties after 6 p.m., decibel limits strictly enforced. If he violated any of it, the lawsuit would resume, and he would be liable for triple damages. Greg signed it. He had no choice. He spent the next month tearing down the part of the deck he had built illegally. He had to hire licensed contractors to do it. It cost him $20,000. He sold the lumber on Craigslist for pennies on the dollar. The pool stayed. It was legal. But he never built the outdoor kitchen. He never built the guest house. The variance was denied, and after the lawsuit, he couldn't afford to fight it again. The parties stopped. The bounce house disappeared. I used the $15,000 to install triple-pane windows. I hired an acoustic contractor to add insulation to my walls facing Greg's property. I bought better noise-canceling headphones. I put the rest in savings. Life became quiet again, not completely silent. I could still hear the kids playing sometimes, the dog barking, the normal sounds of a neighborhood. But it was reasonable, it was human, it stopped at appropriate times. I went back to work. My productivity returned to normal. I stopped taking the anxiety medication.